Welcome to the Big Woods Bucks podcast. Your host, Hal Blood. Got my co-host, Good Lee Shands with me.
Good morning. Still morning.
Still morning. And our special guest today is Brandon Lane, the mayor of Allagash Village, Maine.
I don't know about that.
And Brandon and his wife own Allagash Guide Service. And they guiding bear hunters and deer hunters and moose hunters and snowmobilers and whatever you want to do over there. So welcome, Brandon. And so keeping with the theme, we talked a little bit with, we had some discussion with this. Our plan was coming up here was to kind of tell people the differences in hunting, deer hunting up, because all of northern Maine is the big woods, right? But there are differences, like down our way, we have more mountains and ridges, and up your way, it's relatively flat. If you got a mountain, it's probably...
More rolling hills than anything.
Yeah. You had anything over 2,000 feet?
Maybe Heafy, a Rocky Mountain. That'd be about it.
Yeah. So there's no really big mountains, but... And I think up your way over in that Allagash, but you're between Allagash, St. John's Rivers, and Black Rivers. There's more softwood than hardwood, right?
Yeah, a lot of old like cedar swamps and softwood swamps and stuff.
Yeah. Down our way, I think we're probably 50-50 with the hardwood, softwood. And ours is different because it's softwood in the bottoms and streams in the low, softwood on the top, and most of your hardwood is in the middle. And then the same way on the ridges of the mountains. But I think your hardwood ridges are probably hardwood right over the tops, right?
Over the top, yeah, everything leading up to this.
So all your green is in the lower country where you got your spruce bogs, cedar bogs, and all of that. I know a little bit about it. I moose hunted a few times up north, but not deer hunted. Actually, I did go. We stayed in Allagash years ago, and I brought Joe Donito and Steve, and we hunted about half of the muzzleloader season. It was the only place with snow, and then in the middle of the week, they was calling for snow everywhere, and we ended up getting it down our way, so we moved back down around Jackman. But I did hunt a few days there, and the one thing I learned about it was there's roads everywhere.
Yeah, that's one
because
thing
it's because of the terrain. They can build a road pretty much anywhere, right?
There ain't many places you're gonna walk in a straight line unless you parallel on the river that's more than half a mile.
Yeah,
without hitting a road.
Yeah, it seems like there's a road every mile, and they cut a half a mile either side of that road, so you get to the next road, and it's good for the road hunters, though, right?
Yeah, it sucks for tracking though, because 9 times out of 10 you're getting cut off all the time.
Yeah. But there must be some places where there's blocked off roads or ditched out roads.
There's once you start getting snow there, a lot of people don't venture out too far anyways there. So you get out 15, 20 miles from town and it's completely different.
You don't have as many trackers, you don't think, come up that way? Or?
There is, but that's all there is. The road hunters all stay close to town.
Oh, I got it.
So you're not dealing with traffic nonstop. I mean, when we get snow, like the winter of 18 and 19 in the fall there, when we had the snow, it was nothing. It looked like New York City going out. I mean, there was 20, 30 vehicles, bumper to bumper, going out. You had to leave 3 hours for a daylight unless you want to get caught in traffic jam, just with the road hunters sitting to wait to shoot them on the migration trails and that stuff coming to town.
Yeah, because most of the deer probably in that country, they head north to the Allagash for the deer yard, right?
Yeah, they come. And the biologists call it a bunch, and a bunch of them come from St. Francois over by the St. Lawrence Seaway and migrate from there south to yard up in Allagash in the winter.
They come from Canada, man?
There's one doe that they had collared, and she was at our place there for 2 or 3 winters with the collar on, and it was like 57 miles of the crow fly. She literally slammed the St. Lawrence Seaway and come all the way down.
No kidding.
Yeah. It's actually quite incredible.
Shows you what them deer do. You think the deer live in a certain area there. But
and they had the tracks for, I think it was 2 or 3 years that she held the collar there, and they actually had the tracks, and she followed the same route every year. Yeah. Like when it was time for her to head, she would go the same,
That's like that deer we talked about. I think we talked about it on the podcast, but there's a doe that lived up on the Spencer Road, and she'd go 75 miles down into Sangerville, had to cross the Kennebec River and everything. That It is kind of cool that they collar those does and follow them, and it teaches you how fast some of those things will migrate. But it's where their mother brought them when they were little, so it's where they're going back to.
Yeah.
Well, Brian Donaghy had one on a trail camera somewhere in here, and I think it was in zone 2 or something, but he had it on one of his moose cameras, and it was a doe with a collar, and he posted it on Facebook because he didn't know they collared deer there. He knew they collared some out somewhere here in Aroostook, but the Indian Passamaquoddies, I think, got a hold of him, and they had collared that down in Princeton.
Holy.
125 miles that doe had come.
It's crazy. Even moose, though, like up in the northern part of one, they've never called moose up there. It's always been in like zone 4, I think 4 and 2. And we get pictures of the cows up on the Canadian border in the northern part by Escort that have traveled all the way from zone 4 up there and reside up there.
Yeah, well, they had a moose they collared down just below Jackman on Cat Heart Mountain, a cow, and that summer, probably collared it in the winter, it walked to Rangeley and back in the summer, just not like migrating, just took a walkabout, a cow,
vacation.
from Rangeley and back. That's a pretty good walk through the woods. Yeah, so you don't know, but
It's kind of interesting, though, because down our way, we're used to the deer. They go from Maine into Canada for winter, but you got Canadian deer coming down into Maine. We're not used to that.
It's crazy because you talk to like some of the biologists and that stuff there, and some of our deer do go to Canada, but some of them come. It's like the Hatfields and McCoys, I guess, or whatever. They all go their own little different direction, and you can see it in town. Because like the bucks that people get on camera throughout the fall and summer, like where they are, they only come to certain parts of town. Like they don't cross. Some of them don't cross the river. Some of them stay on the Dickey side, and vice versa. It's kind of weird. Like out back of the house there, when we was feeding heavy, there we'd have close to 100 deer, no bucks, all those. But you go half a mile as the crow flies across the river, and 90% bucks over there. And it's like they all separate where they go.
I know it used to be like that. I don't go up there much when there's a lot of snow in late November, but when you go up north of Jackman, we call it the access road that is up towards the Golden Road, where you're pretty close to Canada there, you know. You like that road kind of splits the distance from Canada to Canada Falls Lake, you know, in there towards Pittston. That kind of splits it in half. And it used to be you'd see one migration trail when they started, and all the deer are headed to Canada. And then the next one you get to, they're all headed to Canada Falls Deer Yard.
Yeah.
It's just where they ended up going. But I got an idea of them ones that are coming from St. Lawrence, because up in that's where they get dumped with snow.
Yeah.
They get that effect, that not lake effect, but it's the same thing off the water, and they get piled with snow. What do they call it up there? The Gas Bay or something?
Bay, yeah.
Yeah. But, you never know. But we were talking about, like, when you get further in to the middle of that whole, what we call the North Maine woods piece, you know, there's the fewest deer, right? Mm-hmm. You get in the peripheral where they can get to a halfway decent deer yard, whether they go to Canada or on the west side, they go to Quebec, and the east side, they come out towards Aroostook, you know, out towards Patton, Oxbow, Ashland, all that. But in the middle, it seems to be the less deer, huh?
Yeah. There's still, believe it or not, deer yards or deer, especially the last couple winters we've had there, there's yards that the deer are actually starting to
stay
there year after year.
Yeah.
So
where are them at?
in the woods.
Here's a few words about our sponsors. Make sure you support these guys. They're all top notch, and they keep Big Woods Bucks going. Thank you. Being the low-tech guy I am, there's one thing I've learned to embrace with technology, and it's my Onyx. I used to carry maps,
and GPS when it finally came out and stuff. But the Onyx has eliminated that because I've got my GPS in my phone now with my Onyx app. I can mark everything in that. It's helpful that I can show other people by putting a pin in if I want to send somebody to a place. Being a guide, that's important, you know. I can give them the pin, you know, put it in there, you know, I text it to them, whatever. So if you want to get your Onyx, get your Big Woods Bucks code, BWB, and get your 20% off, but I highly recommend it. Give you a little update. Skinner Sights. We all know they're the best site going, but it's a great company because Andy and the crew there are innovative and they're always thinking up either new models to make a site for, improve the sites, making mounts for scopes, and now they've come on with their own line of scopes and red dots. Whatever Andy does in the company, it's top-notch, first quality, and they stand behind everything, and we're glad to have them as a partner, and we hope you'll try their sites, and you can trust your life with those, and they're going to get you the game. So get your Skinner Sights, and you can trust me that you're going to be glad you did. Just wanted to talk a little bit about minus 33 in the wool they have, which I believe is best wool going, whether it's base layers or your socks or whatever you're wearing. You got to have wool. I've been stressing that for people for years, to wear your wool, whether it's the outerwear or even your base layers and socks. I've been to the tour of the plant, see how they make their socks, and it's quality, the fit is right, and they're going to be long lasting. I've got socks I've had now for several years, and they look like I'll have them for several years more before they even think about wearing out. So I trust my life to wool, and you can too. Minus 33.
All right, back to the podcast.
We were up, we ice fished that day. I told you we went up to ice fished on that Fifth St. John for muskies. And we had a guy come in. We was there. We thought it was a game. When we see a snowmobile coming across the lake, we're like, who the heck is that, you know? And it was a young fella from down, heck did he live down to, I think Brewer. I mean, like way down there. And he'd come up for the day to pull a tree stand. He'd been hunting up. He was just I didn't think he was more than 30 years old, but he's been hunting up there he got tired of hunting around people, so he struck for the North Maine woods, him and his father. And he was talking about he shot a few bucks up in there, and he was taking a tree stand out that they weren't. He seems like the deer, some years they're in one place, some years they're in another. But anyways, he said, I know where the deer are staying. There's a place over in there the deer are staying. He said, I was going to go in and see if what was in there for deer. I said, don't do it. He said, why? I said, as soon as after we had all the snows, you know, I said, as soon as you make a snowmobile track in there, every coyote that hits your snowmobile track, it's going to lead them right to them deer. He goes, I never thought of that. He goes, I said, yeah. I said, never. If the deer are in some pocket in the middle of nowhere, don't make a track, not even a snowshoe track. Don't go and look for them deer, you know. I mean, if you're running a coyote with hounds, you might end up there.
Yeah.
But I mean, to purposely do it, he goes, yeah, that's good. He said, I never thought of that, you know. Yeah. But, yeah. But I know you talk about, you've been finding quite a few signposts, right?
Yeah, they're hit or miss. Like you might get into an area where there's a bunch, and then you might go 10 miles before you find another one there. But lately, like the ones I've found the last couple of years, when you find one, there's at least a half a dozen. Like it's like they do them right in a little acre there, and they hit it up like crazy.
Yeah.
And it must be like their bedroom or.
Well, I think it's probably like a hub where them different bucks are overlapping through there.
Well, that one camera that we had out last year, we had, I think it was 7 or 8 different bucks hit the same one signpost that we had on there within like 4 days. You know, and it's like that, and they were all, most of them were during daylight. I mean, very few were night. They were all during daylight, and then they
Gonna do any hunting there this year?
Yeah, well, we went into change the batteries and put a stand up there a couple weeks ago, but we had a little mishap with the guy.
Oh,
that
yeah,
was
you
with
got to
me.
talk about this a little bit. Yeah, one of your guides there, the young fella.
Yeah. Yeah, we was going in to put a stand and check some cameras and change some batteries and some cameras there. And he went up over a brush pile there, and he had his axe was on his running board of the sled there tied on with them little rubber ties. And when he was going, the rubber ties must have busted off on a stub or something. And he went to jump off his sled. When he went to jump off his sled, his axe had come out, flipped around, and he sliced himself down through the leg there and went right through his muck boots. It went through his muck boots, through his sock, his long johns, and his ski pants.
And his leg.
And his leg. Yeah. By the time, because I mean, we were about 30 miles on snowmobile, and I got a hold of Brittany there, and she come out with a truck, and I drove him to the closest plowed road there after we used some electrical tape and some T-shirt to patch it up and got him to the emergency room. But I think it ended up taking like 19 stitches.
It looked pretty bad. He sent me the pictures of it there. It didn't look too
He
good.
must have had his axe sharpened up pretty good to go through all that.
The
and
thing
still
of it
whack
is,
him.
though, we used that axe and barely cut a tree with it. It had to been just at the right angle with how he put
Wow.
the weight down
It
on it.
must have
something.
gone like sliced across. It wasn't like it hit on it.
No.
It must have like a razor. It sliced right down through across it.
I was amazed. I mean, it was just one of them East Wing axes there that he carried just for whatever there. But I mean, the thing is actually dull. I mean, I was surprised.
Wow.
They say a dull tool's more dangerous.
Well, I've been a meat cutter for 40 years, and that's what we tell everyone back when I used to train a lot of meat cutters, that a dull knife is the easiest one to cut yourself on because you're working harder.
You bear it. Same way with a chainsaw, right?
Right.
You got a dull chainsaw and you're trying to
Kick back.
work on it and push on it. And
So,
yeah.
needless to say, he left the axe in the tree above the signpost. It was actually at the signpost there, so he said he's going to leave it there forever. He said that we call that the axe post.
Yeah. But you put a tree stand in there.
Nope, it's there. We ain't put it up yet.
Oh, yeah.
We literally just got there and got off and was going to start doing everything we was going to do there, and that episode took place. But
All right.
at least we don't get carried in there in Bear Graham.
So anybody that's listening and they got some patience to sit, give you a call, right?
That one there will be a good one.
Yeah. Sounds like it's probably nothing's guaranteed, but it sounds like a pretty hot spot, that one.
Yeah, well, it was last year. Like I said, I stumbled upon it. I can't remember. It was with a guy deer hunting or whatever, and he found one of the signposts. Actually, Pauline, he was up. And Paul's the one that me and Paul were hunting together there, and he stumbled upon it there, and he said, you might want to put a camera on it. I went back, put a camera on it, and that's what it was. But that was just one of them things that just stumbled upon it while he was tracking a deer while he was up there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I think Caleb said. All the ones that he had found, he found them tracking a buck.
Legit, that it was, what was it, Friday? The last Friday in muzzleloader. We went up in that area, me and another guy there, and we kept in his track and kept freshening it up with the trucks going down the road there, and it was following like that same line that Paul followed that one last year. And I told him, I said, I guarantee you I know right where this deer is going. He says, what do you mean? I said, it's the same way Paul followed it last year. I said, and I'm telling you, it's going to come out up there in the corner. And sure enough, we went up there in the corner, and that's where we freshened the track up. That deer had gone, as a crow flies in a straight line, probably 6 to 8 miles that night during the storm. It traveled in that straight line up, checking all the signposts and that stuff. And when he got up there, he checked that last one, turned around, and went right back. And we got talking there, and I was showing him some pictures, and he had some pictures there, and we had that same buck on camera, like within 48 hours. And as a crow flies, probably 5.5 miles apart.
Yeah.
That buck was just making that big loop. And like that's the thing with a lot of them up there. Like there's really no rhyme or reason like where they go. They travel so much because there's so few does out there.
Right.
That it's nothing for them to walk 10 miles.
Yeah.
And just walk looking there, and where they lay down, and half the time they don't really lay down. I mean, they might be on the edge of the road because that one there, he actually got on the track and he ended up, I can't remember, it was almost probably 2-3 o'clock in the afternoon, and he had pretty much given up by that point, was just following it down, following the track. They hit a logging road, walked down the logging road about a half a mile. He stepped in the woods, got about 10 feet off the road in the woods, and it was laying down right there on the side of the road, jumped up and took off when he weren't expecting it. And
Jeez.
he never got a shot off at it. But that deer showed up in town. It was probably like the 1st of January. He found before I took him, before he actually showed up in town there.
And that's 30 miles from town?
Yeah, probably close to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of them, because you guys, well, the whole state didn't get snow, so when they show up late or don't show up at all.
And a lot of them, I don't think, showed up really for the last couple storms we got there, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago? That's when everyone that was feeding went from feeding like 20 to 50, 60 there.
When I take my guys out in the spring looking for moose sheds, I'm finding deer sheds in places that I've never found deer sheds, but I think what it is there's so little snow. If those big mature bucks, if they can find a little spot that's got, it don't have to be that big if it's just him, right? If it's just a lone buck, if he can find a place where there's a canopy and find some cedar. Yeah, I found deer sheds the last 2 or 3 years in places that, and it's close to where they'd normally go down into the Forks, winter down at Barry's store, but they just haven't because there hasn't been the snow to drive them down there.
Even with moose, though, I think if they find, a group of moose there, them older bucks, they've been hanging, 'cause like you said, where we've been finding some moose sheds in some of the moose yards, you've been starting to pick up deer sheds from some of the bigger deer sheds there. And I almost wonder if they don't just get there with a couple moose, and moose have the trails beat down for them.
Yeah,
and
they
just
got a
hang
place
out there
to-
with them.
There's no question they do that, because the first time I saw that was a long time ago. It was back maybe around 2000, early 2000s. I was looking for antlers up north, and it's the dead of the winter back, one of them winters we had plenty of snow, and I was going up this road on my snow machine, and I went by a track there, and I go, that didn't look, because there's moose tracks around, I said, that didn't look like a moose track. It looked like a deer track. I backed up, and I looked at it. It was a great big buck. Had come across the road and got into a moose track, and that's what he was doing. He was living right in there, because them moose tromp it down, and it's easy for them. And the moose, they're feeding up higher than the deer. That one deer can get plenty of feed in around. I don't care if there's how many moose are around. The moose aren't browsing down that low, Deer can, and the deer, if he can get some old man's beard, the moose don't eat that. So
I don't know how much, I don't know that I've ever seen, I'm not saying they don't, but if there's some cedar in there, that deer's going to feed on the cedar, and I don't know if the moose are chewing on cedar
well, the
too
other
much.
thing the deer do in the wintertime, the ones that have learned to stay back, when we get those, either some snow and then some wind, which we've had quite a bit this winter, all that stuff blows out of the trees, and limbs and stuff with the moss on it, and it might get buried there, in the middle of the winter. But as soon as it starts, like in March, thawing out, that stuff's laying right on top of the snow, and them deer will go right along, and they can just walk right along and pick that moss and little sticks, browsing anything that's alive that fell off, and eat that stuff,
I think we're in that cycle too where there's a lot of fur that's dying. We're getting a lot of that dead fur right now that tips over, like you said, with that old man's beard in it. And I always knew when I was a kid growing up that deer liked old man's beard, but then I never realized how much they liked it till we went up to Ontario and hunted.
Yeah.
And I mean, that was like a main food source because that was all fur and spruce woods anyway, but that was really what they were looking for.
Yeah. Up there, they didn't have a lot of different varieties of food anyway, so... And once things got frozen up, they were really into that. Remember, they'd go out on them bogs?
Yeah.
And they'd walk out on the ice on the spruce bogs, and they'd eat the old man's beard off the spruce limbs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right out in the open bogs. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so I think everywhere it seemed like all up north it was about the middle of February before they even had to think about yarding up. So at that point in time, I almost think they could lay down, fall asleep until spring and be all right, Yeah.
Yeah, because they had plenty of time to put some weight back on after
Yeah, and they
season was
didn't
over
lose
for
any.
sure.
They probably didn't lose any weight right up until that point, Usually they start losing weight by Christmas time. If they don't get it on, then they start losing it. They get confined in the trails. But it's been overall, I think, we got more snow now, but now we're at the point where when you get into March, I think it's always settling, right? From underneath, it's the ground is a little warmer and it's settling down. And
We're past the tipping point for sure.
Yeah.
We're headed in the right direction.
Especially up here this winter, we didn't have more than probably a foot of snow on the ground in town until mid-February.
right.
And then there's a little bit here and there, and there's all that light, fluffy stuff that they don't really have to push.
And
to
even
get through.
yeah,
And like even we got all that rain there, day before yesterday, and I thought it was gonna crust up because our house dogs could walk on top of it there. Then we got this snow and it softened everything right
Yeah.
up. So like the dogs and everything is sinking there. So I mean that's once that got that moisture in it. I mean it was all that dry fluff there. It ain't gonna last long.
No.
It's gonna be gone here in short
We
order.
get like sometimes we get in March, so we'll get one of those little springtime sieges. It gets up to 50 degrees or something for a few days. Things will start bearing up because you probably noticed under most of the snows we had all winter, even when we got the early ones, and we had a little more snow than you, but not a lot. A lot of them snows stayed up in the trees.
Yeah.
And even the ones from November. So really, underneath the spruces and the firs and the green, there never really was a lot of snow. Even when we had the biggest amount of snow, when we got a foot, and then a few days later another foot, and we'd probably already had over a foot. But underneath the trees, it wasn't barely to my knees. That's all there is under there, you know.
I think we actually had the most snow because muzzleloader week, I had one of my regular clients there, Dave Souza. I took him out and we chased bucks like up in the Forks. I think the most snow that we had was that muzzleloader week. We had quite a lot of snow muzzleloader week, and then after that it went right down the other
We got
way.
them 2 warm spells in December, and it took it way down, and then we'd get a little at a time.
It's like you guys had all that snow muzzleloader week, and we didn't have hardly any. 'Cause I remember calling Hal and I was talking to him there about like there weren't no snow, and even in the softwoods, like it was to the point where it was hard to go because it was just that little dust. And he was saying that he stopped and had to open the door there and was pushing snow out of the way with his door when he opened it.
When Dave and I
we didn't have any of that.
We tracked a big buck one day, got him right out of his bed first thing in the morning, chased him all day. I teased Matt Vinen when I saw Matt in the store a while ago because it was in an area that Matt had cut years before. And I'm telling Dave the whole time we're chasing this buck because he tried everything to get away from us. I said, probably Matt, after when he was down here cutting wood, I said, he probably been on this buck and chased him and educated him for us because this is a cool story. We ended up, as soon as we got him out of his bed, he had a place in mind where he wanted to go, and he went right in a straight beeline. And I came into a bog that I'd never been to before, and I said, Dave, we might have to get wet because I could see that buck went right through the middle of it. But it was one of those ones the dam must have blown out because it was like water, but it wasn't even up, just up over your ankles was all there was for water there. But as soon as he got through that bog, he went out into a fairly open cut, and right up in the middle of that cut, there was a knob that hadn't been cut, and I could see his tracks. I said, Dave, he's right up there laying down in that knob. He's going to know we're coming. I said, we just got to do what we got to do. We followed his tracks, and when we got out in that cut, the snow was up to our knees, a lot of snow. We got up on that knob, trapped him to his bed, and I had let Dave go ahead of me because I'd already shot my buck, and Dave, wasn't carrying a gun. I had the camera, so he followed him right to his bed, and then there was no tracks leading out of it, and I hadn't been paying attention to tracks because he was on it. Well, what confused us was that buck, before he laid down, he walked back his backtrack and watched that cut for a while. Maybe he was waiting to see if we were coming, and then went and laid down. Well, he jumped off the top of that knob, and I bet he jumped 25 feet because it was downhill. There was a skid trail that went around that knob. He jumped right over that skid trail into the softwood on the other side. So we couldn't see any tracks. So we thought, geez, he must have followed his back track. We got down there, couldn't make heads or tail. I said, Dave, you got to stay right here. I got to figure out what's going on here. So I went all the way around that knob, never cut a track coming out of it. And I'm like, So I went out a little bit deeper, and sure enough, I got on the other side of that skid trail, and I saw a disturbance, and he had jumped over that skid trail into that softwoods to get away from us. And I said, Dave, this thing, he's been chased before. We chased him the rest of the day, and yeah, that was muzzleloader. We had knee-deep snow. Finally got a glimpse of him at a signpost. The first signpost that we came to all day, he had stopped and shined that. He must have been there for quite a while because there was a pile of shavings. He stayed on that signpost and rubbed that for quite a while. And again, Dave was ahead of me. I was trying to film him. I see him pick his gun up, and I just saw the back end of that buck go out, but he couldn't be for sure. It was thick, and he could have shot, but didn't know if it was the buck or not, so didn't get a shot off. And we get up there, and sure enough, it was that great big buck track. So, but that was the most snow that up until, a couple weeks ago when we started getting more, that was the most snow that we had all year.
Hi, Hal here, host of the Big Woods Bucks podcast. We're excited to announce our partnership with the most respected and recognized land company in the Northeast, Christmas and Associates Land Company. Owners Dan and Mark Christmas are two upstate New York natives with deep roots in the Adirondacks and Tug Hill Plateau, as well as two of the most passionate big woods hunters you'll meet. Whether it's newly constructed camp surrounded by state wilderness or family getaway, their team of experienced land guides are the best at matching folks with a perfect land track at an affordable price. They even provide financing. Christmas Land Guides will provide full land tours using ATVs, snowmobiles, and even snowshoes so that you can scout every acre. Christmas Land and Camp staff also help you construct the camp you've always dreamed of using our in-the-house master builders. For over 35 years, no one in New York State has provided more big buck properties and family hunting camps to hundreds of folks who love the woods than Christmas and Associates Land Company. Dan and Mark and the whole company remain dedicated to wise land conservation and treating everyone they meet like family. Always available 7 days per week unless there's fresh tracking snow. Call 800-229-7843 or visit Land and Camps on Facebook or go to landandcamps.com.
And your snow goes earlier. Up north, we discussed that because you can look for moose antlers quicker than we can down our way.
Yep.
Yeah. Even when you have more snow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy like that. It's just...
I think the thing that helps us out a lot, though, is we have a lot of the cuts, so it's a lot more open.
Yeah.
So when the sun can get into it more than in, like, the wooded areas.
Yeah. We have so many ridges and mountains on the shady side of those. Sometimes it don't go till June. You know, I've seen years. My neighbor there, Eric Hall, he used to have a big thing he always did was June 1st, he'd go up and ride the north side of Ball Mountain on his snowmobile. June 1st. Many years he could do it on the north side.
Well, we were looking through pictures yesterday. Me and Brittany was there, and a year ago yesterday, I took 3 guys out shed hunting, walking, and everything was bare up north. Like a year ago yesterday, March 7th.
Yeah.
You know, we were out walking around there, and March 7th, 8th, and 9th, I got the shed hunters. And then on the 10th is when we got a real big, we got like a 20-inch storm, which passed us through till.
Yeah.
But like, it's strange, you look outside right now, and you'd never swear a year ago you could walk wherever you wanted to take and walk.
Yeah.
You know, it's...
Yeah.
Had some
It's all
funny
in
ones.
cycles. Every year is different. Some people think we're going to be like Hawaii here in a few years, but I don't
It'll come
see
back
that.
around.
This winter's actually been, last couple winters haven't been real cold. We had a few days, well below zero, but we had more colder days this winter. Like it didn't, till we had that little thaw there a week or so ago, would have been, was it before the snows? No, after the snows.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, late February. It'd been about 6 weeks since it'd been above the freezing point, right? You must have had that too, which is nice. It keeps it nice and powdery and stuff. And so overall, I think the deer are doing pretty good. And you've been after them, the coyotes, huh?
Trying.
Taking care of that area for the coyotes.
Yeah, between us and 2 other guys there in town, I think we're up to close to 60 we've killed in the last month right there in town.
Nice.
Man, you can't believe how much that helps them deer down in there in the winter. And I tell people it isn't just that they kill a certain amount of them; it's that they keep them on edge and harassed and run them. And some of them, especially them little ones, they run out of gas by spring and lay down and just die anyway. So getting them coyotes out of the deer yards is really a big help. So, you guide for that?
Yeah.
If somebody wants
If
to
someone
come,
wants to.
get a hold of you, right?
Yeah, we don't push it, advertise it too much, but
Have you still got your big dog that can catch him and
yeah,
get him on his own?
yeah.
I'd heard of dogs like that before, but I think it was Hal I was talking to. I was talking with somebody the other day. That was the first time I'd ever been coyote hunting where I could hear him yapping. And I remember you on the radio, you said, you better get ready, he's coming. So I'm all ready for that coyote to pop out because I was at the edge of that. Oh, it was like an old gravel pit there. And nothing happened. And then you said, yeah, he won't be coming. We got him. And I'm like, well, I didn't hear a shotgun go off. Your dog had caught him before he had a chance to get to me. That's the first time I'd ever experienced that.
That was pretty convenient. He was right beside the road, remember?
Yeah.
He was just 20 yards from the road, and the dog caught him right there.
I'm pretty sure that was the same day, though, because I remember thinking, we were just talking about that deer. Somebody had chased him before. Wasn't that the same day as I remember it? We got on a big coyote that got on a stream, and he would not leave that stream, and he kept going north, and we'd get up ahead of him, and then he'd come back down. And there was open water there in places, and he just kept taking us up and down that stream.
Was it all along the snowmobile trail?
Yeah. That's what he would run the snowmobile trail there until he heard a snowmobile, then he'd jump on the stream.
Yeah.
And then he'd run up
that
the
was
stream.
Heel stream there,
Because I think we got that coyote first thing in the morning, and it was just the three of us, just me, you, and Hal. We'd get up ahead of that other one, and he'd turn and come back. We never did. And one of us, I think you saw him, there was a bridge. Weren't you on a bridge or something? And he ended up, you saw him running down that stream bed. Somebody saw him, but just briefly, and we never even got a shot off. And we chased him all day.
So that was a good, probably 5-6 hours that we were on him. Because I remember it was a frustrating run.
Yeah.
He'd been chased before.
He ended up bringing us all the way over to the hot top there too, if you remember, just up past town. Because he came out and he tried crossing the road there, and he turned and went back in. Then he hit the stream again, and we couldn't get him back off the stream.
Yeah.
He loved that stream.
He was a wily coyote.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He'd been run before.
Yeah. So, what are you getting ready for now? Antler hunting?
Shed hunts and canoe trips.
Shed hunts, canoe trips. You guide the trips too, or you rent canoes and guide trips?
Yeah, we do everything from meal prep to canoe rentals, transportation, guided. Pretty much you can build your own package, equipment rental.
All right. You got to get a hold of you for that if they want to go canoeing.
Yeah, believe it or not, like I grew up in Maine my whole life there. When we bought the place in 2015, I didn't realize like what type of destination place the Allagash River was.
Yeah.
And we get families that come from China. I guided a family from Colombia last year. Like all over the world, people are coming and doing the river.
Well, it's a designated, they call it the Allagash Wilderness Waterway. So people hear that wilderness
It's one of the last places you can go, though, really, and especially in Maine, and be 100% remote. Like there's very few access points. I mean,
there's some nice campsites on it.
Nice campsites. Some of the best trout fishing that you'll have in the spring. I mean, it's just beautiful. You wake up in the morning there at a campsite, and you'll see moose walking around in the water there, feeding on the vegetation that grows under, and ducks and loons. And
Have you got some of those old trippers?
Yep.
Those are the ones everybody looks for. Because they don't make them out of the same stuff now. But my dad had one of those when I was a kid. One of those, I think they call them an XL tripper, and it was made out of that Rolex. And boy, you could freight those things. They'd carry a lot of freight, and they were tough.
That's my moose toboggan.
Oh, it is?
That's what I floated 2 moose. I did one down the Allagash in it, and I did that one last fall down to St. John. They'll take a 1,000-pound moose in a purse and without thwarts in it and float them through.
They say when they was advertising them, way back, that the load capacity is 1,800 pounds.
I believe it. I mean, it's one of them things, but it's like nothing else though. They make something that lasts forever,
Yeah.
and they always end up going out of business because they don't get the repeats because people still have the
I still
ones.
got mine. I bought one for $700 at the Old Town Blemish sale one spring.
Give you $1,000 for it.
I bet you would.
Yeah, they're famous. All the guys I know, like in the Skowhegan area, because we were just talking about that Gilpatrick there. He used to, build canoes, and he's famous for building canoes that people would take up there. But a lot of guys that like to travel from Farmington, Skowhegan area up there, they got them XL trippers, and they'll ask you don't know where there's any of them XL trippers. Everybody's looking for them.
I mean, you can load them things, freight them with whatever you want. I mean, you look at some of the old pictures there of the loggers back in the day, used them, to haul lumber.
Yeah.
Freighted right up full of lumber to go to build a camp on the side of the river, trapping camp or whatever it was there. Like, you can freight them.
Yeah. I used to use it. I helped Steve Coleman rebuild the camps up on
I remember you telling me
Holden
about that.
Falls up there on the Moose River up by us. And when the guy had bought that land there, he wanted them rebuilt. They were all in disrepair, and one of them was pretty good. Steve did it with another guy. They just had to patch some logs. It was a log cabin, and it was open use. It was at a campsite on the river at the falls. But the other one was pretty much gone. But to rebuild it through Lurk, they had to use like 50% of the existing materials. So they had disassembled it and just kind of laid the walls out. The roof was gone. And then Steve had gone in with the other guy in the fall, and they cut down a bunch of cedar and spruce and stuff and knocked it down. So I guess the other guy didn't want to do it. So Steve said, "You want a job this early summer here?" I said, "Yeah, sure." And we went in and rebuilt that camp, but we used to take everything up the river. I had a 6-horse Johnson on the motor mount. We'd go in at Spencer Rips and we'd drive in there and we'd load her up. But I remember taking one trip I had I don't know how many boards, like strap-in boards. They were 16-footers, slid them in underneath the thwarts and stuff. And
was that the same trip you almost lost the old guide that guided up there for years?
That was afterwards. But this trip we were gonna get the roof on.
You got to tell that story.
Yeah, so we had the materials to do the roof on this trip, to get the roof on, and I don't know as we'd finished it, but we took the materials, but we had enough strapping to strap the roof. And this cabin was probably 20 by 20, a 16 by 20. And I think it was 8 bundles of shingles, which would be pretty much 800 pounds. A box of nails, 50-pound keg of nails, and all our tools too, chainsaws and all of that stuff, and head up the river with it. And we used to have to, there's a little rips below mosquito rips below it. We'd have to like line it up through to get up there. But anyways, yeah, they'd haul a lot of wood, a lot of anything in them things. But so I got to tell that story.
Yeah, you got to, because I wanted to piggyback off it. I found the same thing, but yeah, you tell your story.
So we went
and then
up,
I'll
and it was the
piggyback
last
off it.
trip. So we used to go like for a weekend. Me and Steve would go 2 or 3 days. We got it all assembled and, getting the roof. And he said he wanted to get it done in one more trip. And his cousin was coming over from Vermont, and he said, I'll take my boat. The river had come up. It was in the summer, but we'd got a big rain or something. So the river, he said, I think I can get my boat up there. It had a 14-foot boat with a 25 on it or something. And he said, I'll take my cousin Nelson. He said, I'd like to have another guy, and 4 of us can get that finished and we're done with it. And I said, yeah. He said, you think Carol Huey would go? I go, I don't know. I'll ask him. That was one of the old. He really wasn't that much. He was probably back at the time. He was probably 20 years older than me, but he was probably in his 60s, capable guy. So I called Carol or whatever, and yeah, I'll go with you. He used to guide around it way back when there was no roads. He used to guide that Moose River boat trip all the time. So he knew the river, and I told him what he was doing. So anyways, we didn't have a lot of stuff to take up, but we had, I can't remember what we had in the canoe, but he had, thank God, Steve had taken a lot of it in his boat. And he went up, he had that 25 horse, and he just sailed right up the river, and we'd like with the 6 horse. And we get up to this Mosquito Rips, and all it is the water comes into this. There's only one little narrow channel you can get through it. And you can't even get through it unless there's plenty of water. So you usually would always just line down by it. So, and there's a big pool at the bottom of it. Beautiful spot. So I'm humming up there, and I start to turn in to line the canoe, and Carol turns around, and he looks at me, and he says, "You think we can run it?" And I'm like, well, he knows the river, I don't. So evidently he's done it before, and I go, all right. So I wheeled her right back, and I got back out in the middle of the pool and lined up, and there was a rooster tail coming off of that. There's a big boulder in the middle of it, and it was covered, and it was like probably a 3-foot rise to get up over that rooster tail to level off again. And I said, all right, he's done it. I wound that 6 horse right wide open, and it's only 6 feet wide at the most. I mean, it's just wide enough to get through, really, you know. And I wound that thing right up in there, and that 20-footer got halfway up on that, and it wouldn't. I run out of power. It's not going to go up and level off. And there I was, and Carol grabs a paddle, and he starts to paddle forward, and I knew we weren't going to make it. All I wanted to do was let off and like slide back down in the pool. I was going to ease up. So I turned, and now there's a rock right here by the motor. I'm going to hit this rock. So I turned my attention to that, and Carol, I don't know what he did, but he obviously didn't keep us straight. And we went around sideways so quick, I didn't even know what happened. We went whoop, and right upside down. And underwater, we're in the pool now, right? Because we flipped down into the pool, and I come up, canoe's upside down, the motor's sticking up, upside down, and there's no Carol. So I can't touch bottom, so I grabbed a hold of the gunnels, and I'm swimming it towards shore. And I'm looking around, I don't see Carol, and then finally my feet hit the bottom. I could touch bottom. I was about up to my neck, and I figured he must be underneath of it. And I pushed for all I was worth. I give it a quick shot, and I flipped the canoe over, righted it, and there's Carol spitting. He was spitting, and he's going under. Now, I didn't know. He's been on the river his whole life.
This is the funny part.
He can't swim a stroke. I didn't know it. And we didn't have you'd have thought he'd had a life jacket on if you can't swim.
Yeah.
And so he ain't got no life, and he's going under. So I quickly pushed the canoe towards shore so it don't go down, and I grabbed a hold of him, and I pulled him. He was a short guy, and I pulled him over, and I had my feet on the bottom, and I got him over till he could finally get his feet on the bottom, and the water was calmer over there. And all he was saying the whole time I was doing that, he goes, I thought I was a goner. I thought I was a goner. He kept saying it. And then finally I laughed. I'm looking at him. Now I know everything's good. He never lost his hat. He had his hat on, and he never lost it. And his glasses, he never lost his glasses. He had his wire rim glass like you got. His glasses are on, his hat's on, and he never spit his chewing tobacco out of his mouth. He still had his water, and water, everything is flying out his mouth and his nose, and he never would spit that tobacco out. I laughed. I looked at him, and I laughed like, oh.
I remember
that
the
funny?
reason when you first told me that, and I don't want to hog because I want to, but maybe Brandon can piggyback off this and talk about maybe some of the old guides that he met up in the Allagash. But when you told me that story, I remembered when I was a kid back in the 70s, we would go up, and now if you go up past Parlin Pond, there's a road that goes right in. There's a bunch of like really famous fly fishing only trout ponds and on the backside of Powlin. Well, now you can be in there in 10 minutes with a car if you want to. But back in the 70s, when I went in, you'd go in off the Capitol Road, and then there was a side road up by Coal Stream. And I mean, you were jumping from boulder to boulder to get up in there. I mean, it was a miserable, nasty road. You'd have to drive down through little streams and everything. But we'd go up there and fish those little ponds. Well, I was a good swimmer, and I just assumed everybody knew how to swim. But there was an old guide that used to take people in there on those trout ponds. And I was talking with him. Same thing. The guy's 75 years old. He's been guiding fly fishermen his whole life and on those ponds and doesn't know how to swim.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why would you not learn how to swim if you're going to? But some of those guys, they were just stubborn about it, or they were afraid or whatever. And I just remember thinking to myself, yeah, that's not too bright. I don't know why
I
you
bet you
wouldn't
the
want to.
guys that used to run the logs down the rivers couldn't swim a stroke.
Probably
either.
the same thing, but I'm really glad I got to meet some of those guides from same thing. I want to say Amy LaCour, but it wasn't Amy LaCour. It was the little Frenchman that was over your way. But there was the guy. What was the guy that had the sporting camps? If you were heading out of Greenville up towards Spencer, the little Frenchman that had the sporting camps in Lily Bay.
Can't remember his name. I know who you're talking about.
He was a little short Frenchman, and
Yeah.
he was one of the first guys that the state should have left him alone. He was one of them guys that could snare coyotes.
Yeah.
And back when we were really having problems with the coyotes in the early days, he was snaring coyotes up there. And then the other thing was he would, if he found anything for a carcass, he would bring it out on Spencer Pond. And like probably in the early 80s, he was on the front page of the Maine Sportsman with a bunch of coyotes, because he'd go up and sit on those Spencer Pond camps on the porches and shoot them off there. But I just remember thinking I was so glad that I got to meet some of those old timers that are gone now, just like
Yeah.
you did, the guys in Jackman. But were you able to meet some of those old guides in Allagash, or were they already gone when you got up there?
Yeah, I mean, one of the guys, Pike Kelly, he worked for us for a while, and I told him he needed to write a book because he grew up. Well, he was up there logging before there was really any roads, and like doing all that stuff and listening to the stories of like running the river and working on the river, the old logging camps and that stuff. I mean, half the stuff he said I forgot about, but it was. I mean, I definitely enjoyed our rides in the woods when we was bringing canoers out and that stuff. Just listening to him talk about.
They cut with a buck saw, and
Buck
that's
saw.
back when men were men, huh?
Yep. And then like
Yeah.
I mean, still to the day that like he used to redo wooden canoes, like the old cedar strip canoes, and make canoes and all that stuff there, the poles and everything like there. And he was probably one of the last of the old guys that were really around.
Yeah, and those guys that like those old cedar and canvas canoes, I like Paul, the guy we're staying with here, he's building a cedar strip canoe, and they're nice, but those old guys that like the cedar and canvas, they didn't like them strip canoes. It had to have canvas on it. They were kind of set in their ways if you were going to...
Yeah. Fiberglass was...
Yeah, they hated fiberglass. It had to be canvas.
Yeah, Dave Edgar was the same way. He used to build canvas canoes. It's Ryland's would be his great grandfather, and his mother's grandfather, and he was the same way. It was sacrilege to put fiberglass on a wooden canoe. Yeah. So, you listening, Paul? But well, there was a reason for it too. Actually, he said the fiberglass, if you're in rivers, it's fine on the ponds, I guess, but in the rivers, if you like slide over a rock, that fiberglass delaminates from the wood sometimes, and it makes a void, and then that's where your water goes, and it'll probably cedar, it won't rot, but you're gonna have a black spot there. He said with the canvas, he said most of the rocks, unless it's got a sharp edge on it, that will give and it'll just slide over it and it doesn't do a thing to it. And then they used to have a way they used to patch them on the river. The heck was that? Something they had, some rosin thing they used to heat up, and if they got a little tear in the canvas, I can't remember what it was now he talked about, but or they actually carried some spare canvas. If they got a bad enough spot in it, they would cut it out, put the patch in underneath, and seal it up with something. They always had this, something we used to. I built one there, and with him, he did a canoe school one winter down there. We built 2 canoes, and it was something with lead in it. And we had these canvas mittens he made us, and we had to spread the stuff on the canvas.
Because it had lead?
Well, it fills the holes in, so it makes it smooth, and you paint it, and it's nice and smooth and shiny. So, but anyway.
Was the Kelly, the guy that you were talking about, was he related to the Kelly family that's still up there? Or?
Yeah. He's got, I think it was like 9 siblings. And,
I was going to say, because that's a pretty common name up there in Allagash.
Yeah, Kelly, O'Leary, Hafford, and McBride. Those are pretty much the 4 names that are up there.
Yeah.
Yeah, Paul's dad was talking yesterday about how it was kind of like a little closed community up there for years. If you were an outsider, they didn't really want you up there.
It still is. Nothing's changed.
Yeah.
Yeah. They don't burn as many buildings down now when somebody moves in.
I don't think so. I ain't heard of it since we've been there. We've been there going on 10 years. So.
That's what Paul's dad, Mark, said. He said if you weren't from there and you went up there, you bought a camp up there, before you ever got there, it'd be burnt down.
Mine are all still standing, knock on wood.
Yeah. They must have liked you, I guess.
Yeah, something like that, I guess.
Did you have a connection up there before you bought the place?
Nope. No, me and Brittany, well, we had the guide service back home there in Central Maine. And
I didn't know. What was that?
Country Boys Guide Service.
Oh, yeah.
Down in North
Probably
Anson.
never heard of you then.
We was down there. We mostly did just turkey and bear down there.
Yeah.
And we was in Hartford, Connecticut at a NWTF show at Cabela's. And we had a booth set up there for that. And the previous owner, Sean, had a booth set up for Allagash Guide Service there. And we just got talking. And he's like, it's for sale. He said, well, we've been trying to sell it there. And me and Brittany were 24, I think, at the time, 23 at the time. Really didn't have a pot to piss in or nothing, really. And Brittany's like, whatever. If you think you can do it, you can do it. We talked about it Sunday on the way home, and I started calling around there. And 3 months we took and ended up finally closing on it. And when we moved up there, Brittany stayed home because we had our kids. Emily was still in school, and she didn't want to pull them out of school.
Yeah.
Come out, so she stayed home. I lived in a little camp. We didn't have a house or anything to live in when they come out of school there. So I got shopping around, knocking on doors, finding places that people weren't at, and found one little cabin, house, whatever you want to call it there, on the river, and found the guy worked at Waste Management in Frenchville. So I went to Waste Management there, and we sat down in the break room and bought the house there, and at the break room of Waste Management, went to the attorney, he drew up the paperwork. And
wait a minute now, you said you didn't have a pot to pee in, so
I didn't. That's why I owned the financing. Oh. Yeah, that one right there. Me and him drew it up there, gave him a down payment, and we started off with a little house there that we ended up putting a bunch of work into, and we sold it, and now we're living what we're living now.
Yeah.
Wish we never would have sold it, but we did.
Yeah. Well, sometimes you got to make them moves.
Yeah.
Get better,
I hear these stories. Most of the guys, I'm glad I didn't have to go through that. My dad taught me how to use money when I was a kid, but I hear these horror stories. Hal was the same way, where you had to take every bit of work you could get. You had to take it because you had payments. A guide business is hard enough to run, but when you got them payments hanging over your head and stuff, that I don't deal well with that kind of pressure. I don't like stress like that. So, I mean, there was stress to build the business, but I'm so glad I never had the big payment hanging over my head.
You had a dream, followed it.
Had a dream, we followed it, and that's where we are. And 10 years later, we're still there.
I got to know for sure, because I tell people you're from the same place as I am, but I grew up in the Farmington area, but I probably spent more time in New Vineyard than any other place, because half the town of New Vineyard's named after my grandparents. So I grew up on the Barker Road. That's my mother's maiden name, but I used to spend some time up there on the Anson Valley Road where your family farm was. Did you actually live on the Anson Valley Road?
Yep. Yeah. Right on 234 there, right at the mouth of, north of, New Portland Hill Road and Pileland Road.
Oh, yeah.
That's born and raised right there, and we built the house just down the road from there.
Right on 234 that cut you over to...
From North Anson to New Vineyard.
Yeah.
I can remember when I first moved to Skowhegan, I guess it would be your uncle, but when we first moved to Skowhegan, we'd take the kids to the Skowhegan State Fair, and your uncle had a I don't know what they'd call it, but it was like a pet menagerie. They had every kind of chicken and duck and things you could think of, and all kinds of weird little animals. Well, that was their thing, though. The Lane farm was known for having all those.
Say my grandfather was the one that started that. And now my father's brothers are taking it over. When I say taking it over, I mean they've been there forever, but that's all family. My cousins are involved and all that stuff in it now.
Yeah. Yeah, hopefully they can stay on it. That's a hard way to make a living farming, but there's always some guys that are willing to work hard, and if it's their life and they love it, they're going to do it. But I always tell people, I said, yeah, he's from the same town I am, but I didn't know. I didn't know for sure because I didn't live in New Vineyard all the time, but most of the time I did.
So, but when you moved up there, had you ever hunted up north before?
Farthest I ever been was on a moose hunt, and it was Zone 6, so no.
Yeah.
Never stepped foot up there. And
So he was a babe in the woods up there.
that's right. The best way to learn, though.
That's right. Get baptized in fire right there.
That's right. Throw you in and go, and you ain't got no choice but to get out there and learn it.
Well, but once you made that move and that becomes your lifestyle, right?
It is. It's not a job. It's a lifestyle.
Right.
You live it every day.
Yeah. And your wife loves it.
It has a days. When it's time to do paperwork this time of year, not so much, but
Yeah. Well,
She's a Cornville girl. Did you know that?
No, I didn't.
Yeah.
He's from my hometown, and his wife's from the town that I live in now.
Not
well, at least he got the gene pool split up a little
Yeah.
bit.
Who does? Yeah, she wasn't from West Athens. She was from Cornville.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't know that's where she was from. That's pretty good.
Yeah, lived actually like if you can't get through there now, but there was a road, like if you come off my road, I'll show it to you sometime. Like up where that little church is and cemetery right down the road from me, there's a road that used to cross West Arunset Stream right there, and it comes right out on the road that his wife grew up on. But the flood of '87, that it wiped out all kinds of stuff in New Vineyard. It took out that bridge on West Arunset Stream too, so you can't get through there now. But yeah, it as the crow flies, it ain't 2 miles from where I live.
Yeah.
Just on the other side of the West Arunset.
So you're doing deer hunts, bear hunts, moose hunts,
grouse
hunts.
shed hunts.
Got to do everything.
Everything.
You got to do everything to make a living up in the big woods.
It's a lifestyle. If I can make $1 off of it, I'll do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes if I lose 10, I still
Get
do
hired up, you get down and work at the mill.
it. Yeah, not no more.
Yeah.
I wondered how long, when you told me the other day when we were on the phone talking and you told me you were, I guess I had called you and you didn't call me back for a few days and you said, well, I've been working shift work at the mill. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
So I wondered about that. Those mill jobs are tough.
You get bored and you get in trouble and you find things to do. And that was one of my boredom moments that I figured I needed to take a job there, but lasted 3 months and 1 day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think when you do that, the lifestyle of guiding and living in the woods like that, or just being, it's kind of like a freedom. It's hard to go back from that, ain't it?
It is. I mean, I've worked for myself for the last 18 years now, more or less. And I mean, here and there we hold different jobs. Like I run grader in the woods, or whatever. If someone needs help there, but that's still different when you go to working in a box when you compare to working outside in the woods there. Yeah. That was the hardest part, like to get used to it. And it's still I weren't used to it, was being in the box and you go in the dark and you don't know what it's doing outside, what the temperature is or anything, until you open the door to walk out and you punch out.
I took that job there at Remington when I sold my other place there, but that actually worked out okay for me because the job I had, I worked from home, but I could, if I needed to do the office work at night, I could, if I get up in the morning, it was a good day to go coyote hunting or do something, I could go out and as long as I got my work done during the week, or I might do it on the weekends or something,
Mm-hmm.
So that wasn't too tying down. It wasn't too bad for me, but the thought of even having to punch a time clock or something, I know the only time I ever punched a time clock was that 2 years when I got out of the Marine Corps and I got the job in Hannaford's, and the only thing I could think about when I went to work every day is how am I going to get out of here?
Mm-hmm.
I'd sit down on the couch with Deb, after we'd eat, I worked the second shift, so I worked from like 2:30 in the afternoon to 1 in the morning or something. So she'd have a big meal at noontime there, and I'd sit on the couch where I had to leave, and I'm thinking, how am I going to get out of there? I look at Deb and I go, I don't want to go to work. I mean, I actually didn't. I just hated it, you know. Then when her father said, hey, you want to try lobster? And I go, yes, I do. So, Brandon, you got roped into being the president of the Professional Guides Association, Maine Professional Guides Association, huh?
Yep.
And then you roped me into staying on the board a little longer, right?
That's right.
Yeah. Okay.
Keep it that way.
I roped him into getting on the board. I put him on the board back when I was still on it. I was the one that nominated him to get on.
It's gone full circle.
That was a good find, right?
I got to tell you, the thing that I'm most proud, the 20 years I was on the board of directors for the Guides Association, towards the end of it, I was the chairman of the nominating committee. And the last 3 guys I put on are the guys that are going to be pushing it
The young
forward.
fellows. We got some nice young blood
doing
in
a
there
good
now,
job. Yeah, I'm really proud of that I put the right people in place.
Yeah. This old guy's got to pass the torch on.
That's right.
I stay around for moral support for the young guys.
Well, he got back at me, though. I don't know if you've heard that. Roger Lambert called me the other day, too, and Jeff Belmore. I hadn't talked with Jeff for a while, but he asked me, Jeff doesn't want to run the banquet anymore. He doesn't want to be the MC, so you're going to have to listen to me drone on
Yeah.
the banquet.
Yeah, the banquet. All right, tell them about the banquet.
So the banquet this year is April 5th. It's for the Maine Professional Guides Association. Happy hour starts at 4:00. It's
Happy hour.
Happy hour.
All right, they're keying in on that.
That's the best time to be there. Is the happy hour is like at 4:00. Then we run through. We do a bunch of different raffles and door prizes, a live auction, a silent auction, bucket tables, kind of like a Chinese auction type ordeal. We have guest speakers that are coming there this year. The guest speaker that we have coming, he won, I think, season 2 of Alone. He's from Maine, down in Belfast, that area there. He's coming for the guest speaker this year. It's limited seats. We sold out the last couple of years. We have usually, our sellout is 400 people. So in the last 2 years, we sold out.
A lot of prizes.
A lot of prizes.
Gun raffles.
As of this year alone, I think we have 6 or 7 Browning rifles that we're raffling off, plus some Henrys, and a bunch of other bigger items.
Yep, a lot of people make stuff, donate it. And what do you call them? Bucket raffles or something?
Bucket raffles.
It's a good time. Nice meal. It's at Jeff's Catering down in Brewer, and
the best part is you don't have to be a guide or a member to attend.
That's right.
Anyone can attend.
Yep, anybody can come along and see what it's like. If anybody in Maine's listening and you are a guide, and you ought to come along. If you don't belong to the association, you ought to see what it's about and come along. Bring your better halves with you and just have a good time. They got to get tickets through Mike, right?
You can either get them through a deputy director, Mike Tumanero, or you can go to the website now, and then anybody can purchase tickets off from the website.
All right. So go to the website, mpga.com?
Yep.
All right, mpga.com.
And we're on Facebook. And I don't know if we're on Instagram, but I know we're on Facebook for sure as well.
Yep. If you heard about it on this podcast, come see me and Brandon there and tell us you heard it here. All right.
Don't forget Lee. He's going to be there too.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Why'd I forget Lee?
He's going to be the MC, so he's the one doing all the talking.
That'll be worth the admission to have Lee being the MC there.
Yeah, there's going to be, now that you left me out, I'm going to have to get even when I get the mic in front of me. It's going to,
I know you
it's
will.
going to be.
You just remember I didn't leave you out.
Yeah.
All right. Good enough. Hope to see you there. Well, this has been a good conversation, Brandon. So they got to get a hold of you at allagashguideservice.com, right?
Yep.
Yep. Or you had a phone number you want to give them or not?
207-398-3418.
All right. 398. What is it again?
398-3418.
Dyslexic. Okay. Got it. Now you get a hold of the Brandon if you want to go on a canoe trip this summer or go bear hunting. He's got some great bear hounds and whatever you want to do.
Got some good hounds, period. No matter what it is.
Yeah.
Good hounds.
Yeah. And he's young and ambitious. How old are you now, Brandon?
Too old.
Too old.
36.
Yeah. You tell him I got boots that old.
I know. I was going to say, you got a son that's older than that, and I got a son that's almost that old. I'm old enough to be your father, Brandon. Imagine that.
Yeah.
That's scary.
Well, you went to high school with my dad.
Yeah, your dad was a couple years older than me, and I told you, do you remember the first time I saw you, because you were probably even thinner than you are now, but your father was built like a stump. He was 2 years ahead of me, and when I played football in 7th and 8th grade, it was separate, but your dad was a freshman, but I used to go into the gym, and your father, when he was 15 years old and a freshman, he was some kind of rugged, but he was he weren't very tall, but he was thick. And I remember thinking, man, that kid's built like a stump. Yeah. Growing up on the farm, he threw a lot of hay and all that stuff.
Yeah. Well, all righty then. We'll check out for another session here. And once again, thanks for tuning in. And hope you enjoyed this podcast. And don't forget to support the sponsors and click your subscribe button on there and send in those questions if you have any or topics. Until next time, good luck on the trail.